And these strengths, there's 34 all told. And are they available in roll-on and spray? Like you can buy them at the chemist or...
I wish.
Because I need to buy a couple, I think.
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Welcome to the show, everyone. How you doing, Doug?
I'm good. How are you today, sir?
I'm okay. Thank you very much.
It's a special day, isn't it? I was just telling you.
It's my birthday. Well, it won't be when this comes out. It'll be like 6 weeks after, 5 weeks or something afterwards. But yeah, it's a normal day for me. I'm just glad to be right side of the dirt. And it's been lots of people reaching out and wishing me well. So it's been a very pleasant day. And of course, I'm spending it with, we're both working, but I'm spending it with Cheryl, which is always a bonus. This episode, we have a young lady by the name of Becca Syme, who is a wee bit of a legend, really. I think if you've done any of the conferences and followed any of her classes, she's done a lot of nonfiction for writers, and we'll get into talking a little bit about that with her Better, Faster Academy. But she's also a fiction writer, and she's done cozy mysteries. So we'll talk to her a little bit about that. So we'll get to her in a minute. But first, we have a question from Celia in Australia. G'day. I thought about doing the question in an Australian accent, but then I might alienate even more people than I normally alienate.
How would we know the difference? I mean, you sound
you're crushing me. Crushing me.
Every time we have somebody British on, I'm always like, wow, like sounds so British. And you sound so Southern California.
I know, dude. All right. The question is, what do you do to still write when you're having a bad or depressed day?
It's a good question. And we were kind of just discussing that not too long ago. I had a similar discussion with somebody not too long ago about how to write when you're not inspired. I think sometimes I think it's okay to take a break. Like if you're just having a bad day, I mean, death in the family or something that's just bad, there's nothing wrong with, you don't have to write every day for that. That's something that's important to tell people. You're not required to do that. But if you are just it's just a bad day, it's rainy, it's gloomy, or it's just, I'm not inspired. I think the thing for me, and trust me, there's plenty of times that I just don't do it. But the thing to do if you're, especially if I'm like set with a deadline and I need to get something work, then just sitting down and writing is probably the best thing you can do. It's a little bit like going to the gym. Like I don't always feel like going to the gym, but if I go every day, in a few weeks, I'm going to feel great about going to the gym. And it's the same with writing. If I don't feel like writing every day, but I do it, in a few weeks, I'm going to have a book. And it's going to make me feel really good about writing. So I think you have to think about it like that and just, push through, whether that's any kind of a stressful, sad downtime or just, what you consider to be writer's block. I think it's just something you just got to keep practicing. And it doesn't have to be good. When I go to the gym, the first couple of times I started going to the gym, my form was terrible. I was barely able to get anything up. There's a few things that still, my form is terrible and it hurts when I do it and I hate it. But I still go ahead and do it. And it gets better every time I go back. So how about you, sir? What are your thoughts?
Number one, sometimes lean into it. I mean, some of the best art comes from heartbreak, from sadness. And so you can use it as inspiration sometimes. And depending on what you're writing, you can really apply it. Maybe look at a chapter ahead, maybe not the one you were about to write. Maybe look at another chapter where something darker is going to happen, more difficult is going to happen, and dive in there. And like Doug said, maybe you're not going to hit your word count. Whatever your word count is for a day, whether it's 500 words or 5,000 words or everywhere in between where most people are, maybe you're not going to hit that word count, but you're going to feel much better about yourself if you knock out 800 words at some point of the story that is probably going to work out, even if you're going to heavily edit that down the road, than if you get nothing done at all. The problem with getting nothing done at all, it makes it harder to start the next time, right? And because that stress you're already under stress, the stress rises because, oh my gosh. And then, I think that's it. And then, do the happy thing, watch some cat videos, talk to a good friend of yours and, talk about it for a while and hash it out, play some music that's uplifting, whatever it is that pushes you through and clears your mind a little bit, do a little meditation, whatever works for you.
I think that's just it. I mean, it's always like, and I think we've both said it before, it's really just write the next word.
Yep. Keep moving forward. One word after the other.
Don't beat yourself up.
Try not to do that.
this is the best job in the world you could have. So
Absolutely. Cool. Let's get to our guest, Becca Syme. She's an author. I am too. This is going to be cool. She's an author of Cozy Mysteries set in Montana, as well as a series of nonfiction books about writing with her Better, Faster Academy. She's a Gallup-Certified strengths coach, which is not the same as going to the gym, with a master's degree in transformational leadership and 14 years of experience in success coaching. That all adds up to she's way smarter than us. So let's talk to her. Becca, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's start off with a little bit of background on how you got involved in writing, publishing.
Yeah, I mean, like I think a lot of writers, I wanted to be a writer my whole life. And so when I got to a point where it felt like I had tried everything, like I had done the things in my life, it was like, why not try writing now? I think I was 21. I wrote a novel for the first time and I just kind of fell in love with it from there. I did a bunch of research, as is my want. And I wrote the novel fairly quickly, I would say. And then I just kept trying to finish more novels and get published and was going the route of, like I think a lot of us, trying to get traditionally published, and then got published in 2010 and then went indie after that. And the way I got into kind of doing the nonfiction work is I had a set of skills, like the Liam Neeson sort of have a particular set of skills, right? That not murder.
You got to say it with his little Irish
I just pictured a kid under a bed.
Yes, it was not murder. I promise there was no murder involved.
That should actually be like your meme for your website. So you
have a particular set of skills. Yeah. But I had some skills that indies sort of needed because they didn't have as much experience on average in running their own businesses. And so because I had done coaching and consulting in like alignment, like basically in business success alignment, I had the ability to help some of my friends use their Clifton strengths. It was just called strengths at the time, to get better and have more success and feel better about their careers and families and stuff. And then I just sort of kept doing it. But it was kind of timing, right? Like I was in the right place at the right time.
So like you're talking about the Clifton strengths. And so could you give us a quick explanation to the folks who may not know and like where to get them and how to find your strengths? Because mine are hiding somewhere. So.
It's the core of the philosophy is that we get better at the things we're naturally better at a faster rate than we get better at other things. So the common, sort of stories that we tell around Gallup, which is who owns the Clifton Strengths right now, are things like the reader speeds experiment, where they put two groups of readers through the same speed reading class, and the group that was average got only slightly more average, and the group that was above average went from 350 words a minute to 3,000 words a minute in reading speed with the same class. And so the reason that we tell that story is to sort of hit home that idea of when you spend time doing things that you're average at, they better be really important for your success, because otherwise you're taking time away from things that are either potentially working against you at that 3,000 words a minute level, because that can happen too, or could be working for you at that 3,000 words a minute level. And so how do we fix and help and solve those problems and then make you better faster, right? Like that's where the name comes from.
So by identifying strengths, then you steer people towards make sure you lean into these strengths that you have. But do you also kind of recognize the things that they're not so good at and then maybe focus on improving some of those if they're needed?
So interestingly, most of our weaknesses are actually the strengths that we have. So the most common strength among writers, there's 34 of them. You have a top 5, right?
Yeah, I was going to say I only have 5, but that's pretty normal for me.
Well, everybody has 5, a top 5. Yeah. And those are your more 3,000 words a minute level focus areas. So the number one strength among writers is called intellection. And it is the ability to think around something in order to gain more clarity, and then to think more deeply and to intellect on something in order to gain more certainty or more depth. So, which makes a lot of sense when you think about what not all writers, but a lot of writers do, how they approach their process. So if you are dominant in intellection, it can help you to think more deeply about your books or characters, your plot lines or whatever. But also making decisions can be really painful. And sometimes writing first drafts can be really painful because you're thinking about something so much, trying to find this level of certainty that you would really prefer to have that you can't always find quickly. So it can take more time. So on one hand, right, it's your best asset. And on the other hand, it can work against you just as much as it can work for you. So understanding those areas I would focus more time on how are your strengths working against you than I probably would on just like the things you're not as good at. Cause I'm like, who knows if you're going to be good at those, but these things you're already really, they're pain points. So like, let's work on those first.
And these strengths, there's 34 all told. And are they available in roll-on and spray? Like you can buy them at the chemist or?
I wish.
Because I need to buy a couple, I think.
Right? Everybody wants to min-max their personalities. I think like they want to try to increase the things that they're not as good at. That's just a normal kind of human impulse. But also the reality is there's some real benefits to being good at things nobody else is good at or very
you
few
say
people
that.
are good at. Hey, it's true.
Yeah, sometimes not so much. Yeah. Balancing things on your nose is not a Clifton strength.
Can you get paid for it though? Like maybe.
I mean, clowns do it or like, mimes.
Dogs.
So yeah, it's hard to write while you're balancing it on your nose.
Yeah,
But
that's not a strength, but maybe it's a talent. Yeah.
It's a talent. It may be a talent. All right. So who gets the most out of your programs? Now, your program is you part of it is the analysis of these strengths, and then you do a coaching program at different levels, right, and different intensities to work with those people. Who gets the most out of this? What kind of personality tends to make the most advancement, perhaps, with your courses?
Yeah, that's a great question, because definitely the people who need it the least are people who feel like they know themselves really well. They're not having any problems. They totally understand how to do this writing life thing. And they're good, right? Like they're really looking for areas where they can learn tactical stuff, sort of like teach me the tactics. Those people tend to not be as good of a fit for us just because they already are aligned most of the time. And so other people would be a better fit. But generally speaking, the majority of people feel really unaligned. Either they're asking questions like, I don't understand why this happens. I don't know why I do this. Why am I not getting the success that I want? Why are these things standing in my way? Like a lot of those questions are the ones that we can answer. And sometimes they just want to know, how do I get more out of these strengths that I have? If I have these 3,000 words a minute, talents, how do I maximize those? We can help with that as well. But generally speaking, it's what's wrong with me? Why am I not getting this? How do I get better? How do I have more success? Right? That kind of stuff.
Do you say 3,000 words a minute?
A minute. Yeah. The world record's 25,000.
For reading, not writing.
Oh,
For
reading.
Reading.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Nick's fingers just cramped up. Thinking
I know. He's like...
I'm like, okay, 3,000 words a day. I see that. My good days, I'm doing more than that. My average day is about 1,800, 2,000. So
that was the reading speeds, right? That was
but that's reading speed. Now, reading speed, I am off the charts the wrong way. Yeah, the wrong way. I'm back over this way. So I'm a slow reader, and if I try and read fast, forget it. I have no idea what I just read. I have to go back and read it again. But my mind wanders a lot.
I do that with writing. I don't even know what I wrote.
I need to write
now,
Yeah. Okay. So let's have some fun. Doug, do you have your 5?
I did not pull up my 5 because I just did it. It told me I was an analytical thinker, and so I hadn't pulled up all my 5 because I just did it right before I came in.
Okay. Let me give you my 5, and this is the order they're in. Number 1 was focus. Number 2 was intellection. Number 3 was input. 4 was learner. And 5 was activator. Does that make me really weird?
No, it's really unique to see both focus and activator together. So focus as a strength is let me narrow in on a goal and then prioritize away everything that doesn't matter away from that goal. So if I have a activator strength, it's the catalyzer, and activators tend to want to start. And so those two have some natural tension between them. It's not that you can't have both of them. And this is the great thing about strengths. Usually when you have opposites, like intellection and activator are opposites of each other. So it makes one of them stronger because the other one's sort of helping with the downside. So intellection what I described about wanting to think around things a lot, activator gets impatient. So it can really help with that intellection, slow thinking, to have activator there being like, okay, but we could start with less certainty. We could start right now, though. We could start. And that's how you'd work on that pair together.
Now I'm thinking. So I think my activator is a little higher than it gave me credit for.
It does. Usually activators like to move. They physically, you can almost see them moving when they're either standing or sitting. They tend to be more fast-paced talkers, thinkers, writers. Like their books tend to be a little on the fast-paced side as well.
So do people change with time? Like, do you see that their experience, or also how, I have the same mistake that I catch in my spell check and I've learned to fix it beforehand? So in the same way, are you seeing people's strengths that can change, or you just are what you are?
Yeah, not the order, generally speaking. And it's not that your strengths don't change or adapt, or because you should actually maximize them and get better and better at them. It's that you'll usually accidentally sort of do them all, right? So if you're focusing really hard, and it's mostly because if you listen to Nick talk about his process, I could pick out all 5 of his top strengths in the process, right? So as he approaches, maybe even just let's say he has a discipline strength that's number 14, and he really wants to work on the discipline strength, and he really focuses on the discipline strength and takes in a lot of information about it and then catalyzes all this. It's you're using all of your top strengths to be more disciplined. So you're probably also going to get better at all of your top strengths as a result of that. The discipline strength may get stronger, but it's not going to replace the focus, the intellection, the input. Generally speaking, I can look at a test somebody took the very first time that they took the test, and I will still hear all of their top 5 at the same level that I would have heard them at when they first took the test, not to the same maturity. That's really different. Your strengths will get more mature over time, but because you tend to mature them all at the same time, you're not likely to change. If your test results change, I always want to talk to you about them, because I want to hear, okay, did your strengths really change, or do you just not like your strengths and you were trying to get different strengths when you took the test?
Yeah, when you retake the test, yeah.
Which happens all the time.
I was going to say, I was going to ask that question because I feel sometimes that people could probably, is the test as accurate to what you are, or could you fudge it by this is all not necessarily intentionally, but sometimes we subconsciously want to go, well, I feel like I'm disciplined. And the reason I asked, mine, didn't pull my test, but one of the things that said, well, it looks like you like to be organized. And I was like, no, that's not me at all. That's
that's a hard no.
Nick's like, no. Yeah. So I find that weird. I don't know. I think that I was intentionally trying to.
Maybe you have an inner organizer that's just trying to break out.
Well, so when the test has the top 5 strengths and there are 5 words, right? If you go look online, I have a set of cards here, which you won't be able to see, but you guys can see, that have all the traits on them, right? That are listed that we use to coach. So one of the traits is definitely organization of a strength, input. But there are all kinds of things that can happen that will make you not as organized, because you will have, you'll have adaptability input, which you'll not be organized if you have adaptability input, versus having a discipline input, which would be slightly different. So it really depends on what the combos are.
That Dougness might be one of the 34 strengths. The word Dougness, which overrides most things. I was going to say, because your strengths don't change that much. What if it comes up and one of them's boring? How do you get that out of you?
There's no such thing as a bad strength, though. That's what's so great. And I totally understand it's common for us to look at our strengths and see, well, those aren't really strengths, though. Those are just things everybody does. So for instance, people who are high input, who compulsively Google things all the time. And then they wonder, why do other people not Google things when they ask, hey, I wonder what the temperature is in Belize right now. Well, you could go find that out. But they don't actually think to go find it out because they don't have the talent that catalyzes that thing in them. Whereas high inputs, the most common thing that you would do as an input is go Google something if somebody asks a question.
That drives me nuts. When someone asks you a question, you're just like, well, I've got to Google it to answer it for you. What do you think? I know the temperature in Belize right now?
So the risk we have is the person driving doesn't have to Google it.
That's true.
You know,
That's
you're
good.
driving along and you're
rule.
having a conversation, and somebody asks that question, and I'll look over to my wife like, well, I'm driving, so you have to be the one to look it up. So
That's a good rule.
could you just go ahead and look it up for me? So yeah.
So of the rules that you kind of coach and preach and talk about with the author thing, what's the one that you break the most?
Oh boy. I mean, honestly, I break the one about your strengths are strengths all the time. Like I complain about my strengths more than anybody. Intellection is one that I have a really dominant, and I complain about it constantly, even though I know it's a good thing to have. It's beneficial. It's helpful, et cetera, et cetera. But it's so easy to get sucked into that feeling of like, there's so much pain associated with intellection, especially for those of us who have it, that we would like to be faster. And I do a lot of questioning the premise, which we call QTPing. I do a lot of QTPing of like, you have to release fast in the industry in order to sell, because there are so much evidence that you don't actually have to release fast in order to sell. But we tend to self-select the evidence that proves that we are bad or wrong. So we will listen to the evidence of like, yes, everyone is selling and therefore I'm bad because I can't write fast enough, right? And it's like, if you actually look at the big picture all the way away, like I've coached 6,000 plus individual writers, right? Like if you actually look at the big picture, it doesn't trend. Writing fast and releasing fast doesn't trend with making money. There are just as many people who are writing fast and not making money as there are people who are writing slow and making money. But we don't listen to the evidence that doesn't support what we already believe. So we tend to just ignore the stuff that disagrees with us.
That's incredibly interesting. I mean, we all hear about and talk about that we listen to the things that support what we believe, right? Well, or support that makes us look better. But on the other side of things, on our weaker side, we do it self-destructive the other way.
We love to critique ourselves, and we specifically love to use other people's success as a way to point out what we are weak at. So when I look at somebody who's releasing 8, 10, 15, 25 books a year, and I'm thinking like, oh, my intellection, I can barely get 3 done sometimes, right? I'm always looking for people who are going to confirm what I already believe. So it really is, it's just a confirmation bias. It's a confirmation of what I already believe. But instead of it being a positive bias, it's a negative bias. So like we're still just trying to confirm what we believe, which is why questioning the premise, it's why I do so much QTP work on my podcast, because I absolutely need to understand from like a big picture, as big a picture level as I can, what's really going on. So if I'm believing something that isn't accurate about myself or about the industry or whatever, I need to question the premise of that.
You're a very useful tool. Do you know that, Becca?
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
I should probably phrase that differently, shouldn't I? That didn't come out well. What's that in my Clifton strengths that makes me say stupid stuff like that?
No. But it's so accurate though. Like I know you weren't referring to me not being human. You know what I mean? Like I totally get that. I understand that. But it is also true in that this kind of knowledge, when you apply it to, so here's why I do this stuff. This is the reason. Back in 2014, 15, 16, when indie was first becoming a big deal, and there were a lot of people at conferences getting up on conference stages, giving rules about writing, what you would hear constantly was, there's one way to do this. This is the way you have to do it.
Oh, it drives me nuts.
Right. And just knowing what I know about the metrics, like I know the metrics of the world and of the author community, et cetera, because I've collected the data. So I can tell you when someone stands up and says, if you don't outline, you're not going to write fast ever. I'm like, well, that's bullshit. And it literally is bullshit. And I heard somebody say that from a stage once. And not only did they say that, but they also said, I have the data, I can prove it. And I had to sit on my hands, and my friend had to hold me back because I wanted to jump up and yell, you're actually bullshitting everyone right now because you're so insecure. You need to prove your point and you are lying to everybody. I was so angry. And it just, and
I would have been too.
Oh my gosh, I get so frustrated. And anytime somebody says a rule, because anytime there's a rule about something in this industry, I can point to so many people who do it differently for all kinds of different reasons, but we just don't have enough breadth of the industry knowledge to know how different it is. So I really started the QuickCast and started writing the books because I'm like, you guys need to understand. You cannot listen to people and just assume that they're correct. Certainty and correctness have an inverse relationship, not a parallel relationship. So you need to know somebody can be completely and totally certain and 100% incorrect. And also you can be 100% uncertain and 100% correct because you just don't have the certainty, but you can actually be right. And we don't understand that about ourselves. So we just listen to other people because they're certain. I clearly am passionate about this.
No, but it's great. And we've, especially through, and the QuickCast, by the way, is your podcast, which is fantastic. And we'll put a link to it in the show notes so everyone can go listen to it. And one thing we've learned talking to so many authors who are far bigger and more talented than we are on the show that we do, everybody does it a different way. And the whole speed of writing thing, plotting slows up some people in the way they work. They trip over it. And we've heard them talk about that. So there's no one way. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. There are some right and wrong things and rules in the business, but that is definitely not one of them.
Yeah. And I think our rule is kind of like when I've said this, your mileage may vary. I think it depends on, there's so many variables that go on. Like even Nick and I, who write in fairly close to the same genre, things affect us differently. There's no general hard set rule for what we're doing. And anybody tells you there is, I don't trust them.
Yeah, I walk out of those talks, or I blow them off. So you're a giver, and I don't know what that comes up to being in a Clifton strengths, but you're clearly a teacher and a giver, and those are your strengths. So, and I was listening on your QuickCast, and you talk quite a bit about burnout and struggles you've had over the last 12, 18 months or so, I believe you said, in realizing that you were taking on too much by saying yes all the time. And one of the questions I had in here before I listened to that episode was, how do the conferences affect you and stuff? When you talk at a conference, you must get overwhelmed afterwards. So what have you done to kind of find a balance?
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't find the balance and also be at the conferences. And I think that's what I've done recently is I've been more selective about what I say yes to. In fact, we were sort of chatting when we first came online and we were like, oh, this conference, it's like, yeah, I used to go to that one. This one, oh yeah, I used to go to that. I used to go to that. Right. And I don't go to really the majority of conferences that I used to go to anymore, primarily because I can't pull back effectively. If I'm around an author and they come to my talk and I know they have a problem, because I know how quickly strengths can solve it. Like, I mean, with Nick, one of the common things that we hear with high focus people is that when they get interrupted, they're not able to refocus quickly. And so they feel guilty doing everything they can to protect that focus, right? And so if I'm talking to a focus person and they're fractured and they can't focus and they're frustrated, then I'm like, but I could help them in 5 minutes, right? As long as I know their strengths, the strengths are so accurate and so consistent, I can help them in 5 minutes. And so I will do a lot of I would rather talk to 1,000 people for 5 minutes at the conference. And by the way, that's not where my coaching number comes from. I just have to say the 6,000 people coached is an hour of time per person. It's so many people, and I have been obsessed with trying to help and understand as many writers as I can over the last decade. And that's where a lot of my ability to speak so quickly, like I can take 5 minutes and help somebody. So I have to be really cautious about how many things I commit to, because I do get so invested and so intentional when I'm at conferences of I want to help every single person that I possibly can. So then I have to only do a few of them a year. And I try to only go to new ones.
Now, it started with you writing fiction. And as the business has just taken off, I'm guessing that fiction writing has been put on the back burner and is put aside. Are you finding time to get back and doing that? And is that a goal, and is that therapy for you?
Yeah, it for sure is a goal. In fact, I'll show you my calendar, even though everybody won't be able to see it. But I have a little calendar that I keep next to my desk that
it's got stars on it.
It does. It has those gold foil stars, right? It's just a simple little calendar that has box days. And I found that if I can give myself a gold star for all the days that I do my fiction writing on, it helps me remember oh, I haven't done it today. because I keep it right next to me. I can't always get as much time as I want to get, but I try to get as many stars as I can on the calendar. And my goal for November was just to have a star every day. And so far I've hit it. I've done a star every day. So we'll see if it continues. But yeah, my fiction writing definitely took a back seat when this career took off. I love it. It's amazing, but I miss fiction a lot. So it's been one of my goals to try to work it back in.
So since it's grown, you now have other coaches that work with you. You have a whole team. Selecting those folks to work with you, that has to be a process because they're basically you, right? You're looking for mini-me's.
No, what's cool, this is what I love about strengths, is I know there's no other me ever. Like there's no one else who's going to coach specifically the way that I coach. I have a very specific desire for what I do when I sit down with somebody. And when I met all of my coaches, because I met each one of them over time, and almost all of them I had met personally before I asked them to coach with me. They each sort of have their own little superpower of something that like they do really great, or like a particular kind of style of coaching or tactic. Like we have one coach named Terry who is so phenomenal at getting people to love the strengths that they have, even if they don't like them. And he has high positivity and he's high adaptability. And he will make you fall in love with a strength that you hate. And because he loves all of them and he gets so excited about it. So we tend to give him people with strengths that are similar to his, or people who have, high restorative, or people who just, they feel like they're not as excited. And they tend to pick him. Like they tend to kind of intuitively want to go and talk to him. And then we have a coach who specializes in intuitive authors. She's high empathy. She's high strategic, which are both very commonly intuitive strengths. And so she's really excellent. She wrote the intuitive book with me. She's really excellent at hearing intuition and helping intuitive authors understand how to help themselves. And then we have an influencing dominant coach. So I found people who kind of had like a particular thing they were really good at that I knew I could count on them to consistently deliver. So it allows me to not have to do those things. And then I can do the thing that I'm really great at, which is really very quick alignment and working with super high level people.
Do you end up sometimes moving clients between the coaches when you kind of discover, hey, you'd be a better match for this person, those personalities, that kind of thing?
Yep. In fact, we will commonly, and this is one of the reasons that I feel like we could basically help anybody, because if you come in and you don't like the coaching experience that you had, we'll just give you another coach.
So now we have one more quick question for you. And that is, what do you think is your author superpower? Like, what is the thing that you do better than anybody else?
Resonance, definitely. Like even if you go and read my Facebook feed, you'll see it. Like I have a strength called connectedness, and then input is my number one. So I'm just constantly listening and taking in information. And then connectedness is about meaning making and about connecting and bridge building, right? So the easiest thing that I do is listen to people talk and then provide some kind of guidance that is resonant for them. So like a lot of my Facebook posts are, you'll see the comments in the hundreds, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you were thinking exactly what I was thinking. How do you read my mind, et cetera. It's like, all I really do is just listen to people and then try to think like, okay, what would people need to hear if they were feeling this thing? Like, what's the thing that would resonate the most with them? So I really do think that resonance is probably my superpower.
That's great. That's great. I'm a little scared to do the all 34 now, because then there's a bottom one and I'm going to feel bad. Like, why did you deserve to be down there?
So there is a bottom one, but the chances are you'll know exactly what it is. Like you could probably read the list. I could tell you that when I read them, that consistency and discipline were in my bottom 5. Like there's just no question for me. I am not that person. I love it when I see it. Like when people are dominant in consistency or discipline, it's super cool. It's amazing that we have them in the world. They're a great gift, but it's just not the gift that I bring. So
me either, actually. And and that makes us delightful, doesn't it? Nick on the other hand, very disciplined, very consistent. and he loves working with me, right?
I do. I love working with my buddy. Hey, spin the darn wheel. We have one. He lied to you. We have one more question.
I was going to say, is he paying you to say that? No, I'm just kidding.
We have our wheel of questions, which is our last question for you. I'm going to spin the wheel. Hope my mic is picking up.
Oh, it's picking it up plenty.
So, Becca, outside of your phone, computer, monitor, whatever that you're working every day, what is the most important thing on your desk right now?
Okay, this will be a weird one. Can I show you? Okay, so it's
oh my God, you have that on your desk?
It's my glasses. So I have these covers for my glasses that are all different and they just clip on like that.
Oh, wait a second.
Hang on. So I'll put another one on. So this one looks kind of like the Cheshire Cat, right? Like the lines. So I have a green plaid.
Are they magnetic?
They're magnetic. Yeah. The frames themselves are magnetic. It's called Pair Eyewear, paireyewear.com. I'm not an affiliate, but I love them. I did make a video that they retweeted once, though, I will say. And then I have a Coca-Cola set.
This is stunning radio, by the way.
Isn't it amazing radio? I love it. The thing I love about the glasses covers is that if I'm feeling in a particular way, or like if somebody says, in their Calendly link or something that they have a particular affinity for something, like if they really they happen to mention that they write a certain kind of romance, then I'll be like, oh, they would probably like my flowers. So then I have this tulips and roses cover that I'll just clip on really quick and be like, hey, you're welcome here. I love you. And that to me is more like it's hospitality, I guess, really more so than anything.
Becca, thank you so much. This was lovely. We can't wait to meet you in person when you do another coaching gig. And everyone go check out her podcast and the Clifton Strengths. Get your thing on that and the Better Faster Academy. So thank you, Becca.
Thank you.
How much fun was that? When you talk about teachers and people that bring something to you, right? And she's effervescent. I mean, she's one of the people you want to have conversations with her. You want to hear what she has to say. And I think that's so important in a teacher. I remember when I was at school, I went to a very strict school there in England. And
a boarding school?
It was, yeah. Well, I wasn't.
Boys?
I wasn't a boarder, but about a quarter of the school was boarders. And it was a very old traditional school, and it was called the Royal Latin School. And I remember a physics class, and we had the deputy headmaster taught the physics class. And it was, oh my God, it was like sticking pins in your eyes. It was so painful, old school teaching methods. Then we had a substitute teacher come in, this chap, and I never forget his name. His name was Mr. Nandy. He was enthusiastic about it. All of a sudden, I had 2 terms where I learned physics. And then we went back, and it was like, dead again.
Really good teachers are amazing. And my mom was a teacher. I grew up with teachers all around me. And there's still only been a handful that just really, really impressed upon me. And those that did, they stick with you forever. And here I am, hitting 50.
That's like everything they say, right? You go, how many mechanics are the best mechanics? Not all of them. Same with teachers, doctors,
I can tell you right now, Becca she's a teacher. I am not one to be tempted by some of these things, but I'm honestly considering reaching out to her and saying I might do this coaching.
I am too, for sure. Yeah.
It would be, I could use some therapy anyway. So,
okay. I can't get on that wagon because I can't get back off again. They'll be like, no, you've got to come back.
We're genuinely worried about how you can function.
Exactly. In fact, there's people we have to report this to make sure you come back. All right. Check out the show notes. Her podcast is great. I've listened to a few episodes and I'm going to listen to a lot more. It's great. We'll put a link to that in the show notes and her books, her fiction books and her non-fiction books, because she has a whole set of books that go with her coaching program. And there's our stuff there and our social media and all that stuff. Follow us on Facebook. Follow the show on Facebook. We'd love it if you did that. And we'll pop out new episodes every 2 weeks. So until next time, be cool to each other.
Fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favorite platform for alerts on new shows coming every 2 weeks.